This is Ethiopia. This is also Ethiopia. Today, these two realities exist at the same time, and both were built under the same leader. 8 years after taking power, Abiy Ahmed has transformed Ethiopia in ways few leaders ever have. The country is wealthier than before, more ambitious, more modern.
ኢትዮጵያ ትበለጽጋለች
የለም እንችላለን
የኢትዮጵያ ጊዜ
Yet at the very same time, it is also more divided, more militarized, and more unstable.
Ethiopia seems to be on the brink of a wide and potentially devastating...
Ethiopia has plunged into a state of political crisis.
As clashes flare up again.
So, how can both realities be true? How can one leader build an Ethiopia racing toward the future, while another Ethiopia falls deeper into conflict? 8 years after coming to power, Abiy Ahmed is ruling over a country that seems impossible to explain. One side of that Ethiopia is a country where even its biggest cultural icon, Teddy Afro, is no longer untouchable. After the legendary singer released a new album that criticized the government earlier in 2026, authorities restricted the album's promotion and detained people connected to the artist. It is yet another sign how far the space for dissent has shrunken. And Teddy was hardly alone. Journalists have been arrested, independent media outlets suspended, and critics detained. At the same time, conflict continues to tear through parts of the country. Millions have been displaced from their homes, while violence and insecurity remain a part of daily life for many Ethiopians. This is one side of Ethiopia under Abiy Ahmed. But there is a completely different Ethiopia. Walk through Addis Ababa today, and you'll find a city being rebuilt at remarkable speed. Entire districts have been transformed, roads widened, parks constructed, public spaces redesigned. Even the streetlights come with charging ports for mobile phones. The message is impossible to miss. This is a country racing toward the future, and the capital sits at the center of that vision. For Abiy, Addis Ababa is more than a city. It's Ethiopia's showroom, the place where investors, diplomats, and visitors form their first impression of the nation.
አዲስ አበባ የብልጽግና ሲምቦል ናት። ማንንም ሰው መጥቶ ከውጭ ሀገር አዲስ አበባን ብቻ ረግጦ ሌላ ነገራችንን ሳያይ የመመለስ ዕድሉ በጣም ከፍተኛ ነው። አዲስ አበባ
But the ambition stretches far beyond the capital. The government has launched Digital Ethiopia, invested heavily in technology, and is positioned the country as a future innovation hub for the region. This is the other Ethiopia Abiy Ahmed built. So, how do these two realities exist at the same time? How can one leader create both a fractured Ethiopia and a futuristic one? The answer lies at the core of Abiy Ahmed's project, and it's a philosophy called Medemer.
መደመር
When Abiy took office in 2018, Ethiopia was on the brink. The country was deeply polarized, locked in a state of emergency, and shaken by years of relentless protests. Abiy's answer was a philosophy called Medemer, meaning synergy or addition. It was presented as a solution to Ethiopia's deepest problems. At its core, Medemer was a call for unity. Abiy argues that Ethiopia's ethnic, political, and regional divisions had weakened the country for decades. The answer, he said, was not separation, but cooperation. Reconciliation over confrontation.
ጎንበስ ብለሽ ተንበርከሽ ቅራ ጠይቂያት እንጂ
He pointed to the victory of Arua as proof of what Ethiopians could achieve when they acted together. And for many, Medemer felt like a reset, a chance to imagine a different Ethiopia and turn a new page. But beneath the optimism was a much harder edge, because Medemer was not merely presented as a path forward. It was presented as the only path forward. In his first book, Abiy wrote bluntly, if Ethiopia fails to implement Medemer, it will perish in rot. That statement revealed something important, which is, if Medemer was the cure, then opposition could only be part of the disease. Dissent was no longer just disagreement, it became an obstacle to national renewal. But that statement also reflected Abiy's convictions. Long before he entered public life, Abiy told colleagues that God had assured him he would one day lead Ethiopia.
ጠቅላይ ሚኒስትር ሆናለሁ አለኝ ማለት ነው። በዚህ ታምናለህ እንደዚህ ታምናለህ ብዬ በጠየቀኝ አስታውሳለሁ። ማመን አይደለም አውቃለሁ።
That sense of destiny was rooted in a childhood prophecy from his mother, who told him he would become the seventh king of Ethiopia.
በሰባት ዓመቴ እናቴ ሰባተኛው የኢትዮጵያ ንጉስ አንተ ነህ አለች።
Whether viewed as phase, conviction, or something in between, Abiy came to power believing he had a mission far larger than politics. He wasn't trying to manage Ethiopia's problems, he was trying to transform Ethiopia itself. And with Medemer as his blueprint, he began putting that vision into action. Abiy's first target was Ethiopia's economy. For decades, it had been state-led and debt-heavy. He opened telecom and banking to private and foreign investors, and even floated the birr for the first time in the currency's history. On paper, the reforms appear to be working, with Ethiopia becoming one of Africa's fastest-growing economies. But for Abiy, numbers were never enough. He wanted transformation people could see. That vision became most visible in the corridor development projects. Addis was remade block by block. Supporters saw modernization, while critics saw disruption, but few denied the scale. The same projects are planned to expand to 75 cities nationwide. But transformation was not just economic. In 2019, Abiy dismantled the political system that had governed Ethiopia for nearly 30 years. The EPRDF, the coalition of ethnically based parties, was gone. In its place, he created the Prosperity Party, a single centralized structure meant to foster a shared Ethiopian identity. But opponents saw something else, the concentration of power around a single vision. And as a result, the TPLF, the leading party that ruled Ethiopia for 27 years, refused to join. What seemed like a political dispute would become one of the most consequential decisions of his premiership. The first cracks appeared sooner than expected. In June 2020, Oromo singer Hachalu Hundessa was assassinated. The fallout was immediate. Violence swept across Oromia, hundreds killed, thousands displaced. The government's response was severe, with security forces opening fire, opposition leaders and journalists arrested, thousands detained. For many Ethiopians, this was the moment the optimism of 2018 began to fade. The language of unity remained, but the methods were beginning to change. The next rupture was far more devastating. At its core was the same question that defined Medemer: who gets to decide Ethiopia's future? After the TPLF refused to join the Prosperity Party, relations deteriorated rapidly. Political confrontation gave way to military confrontation. And in 2020, Ethiopia descended into the deadliest conflict of the 21st century. Hundreds of thousands perished, many not in battle, but under blockade and famine. Yet Abiy never wavered. He framed the war as all versus new, good versus evil, even invoking God as Ethiopia's ally.
እንዴት እንዳሸነፍኩ አውቀዋለሁ። ፈጣሪ ከኔ ጋር ባይሆን ኖሮ አይሆንምና
It revealed the cost of a leader utterly convinced that his vision was the only path forward. The war ended in 2022 with an uneasy truce, but peace did not follow. By 2023, violence had spread elsewhere. War erupted in Amhara, and insurgency persisted in Oromia. The battlefield changed, but the government's response did not. Arrest, repression, military campaigns all continued. But there is also a new symbol that defines this phase, and that is drones. Technology, once showcased as progress, is increasingly deployed as a weapon of control. Modernization has made the state more powerful, but not more stable. And nowhere is that contradiction more visible than in the Ethiopia Abiy Ahmed ultimately created. In 2018, Abiy warned that every new era in Ethiopia begins with hope and ends in division. 8 years later, that warning feels less like a prediction and more like a verdict. Not because Ethiopia remained unchanged, but because it was transformed by a vision that built and fractured the country at the same time. Today, two Ethiopias exist side by side, and the struggle between them may become the defining story of Abiy Ahmed's legacy.